Alright, so I was recently browsing through PS2 Classics on PlayStation 3, which I'm very thankful are still available as of 2025, especially when you got games like God Hand and Tulip, which physically go for something in the triple digits, as opposed to the $10 price they have here. But I stumbled upon a really interesting sounding game called Trapt, spelled exactly like the band that had that song Headstrong. And obviously, a lot of games have different traps that you could set off, but in most cases, it's not super in depth, let alone the entire focus of a game. And I was really curious as to how they did it, even too, especially if that was your only combat action. And the answer to that, as you can see in the background gameplay here, is to have you have complete control pretty much over three traps. One on the ceiling, one on the floor, one on the wall. You have different options, but you can only equip three for a mission at a time and only have them one in each category active during gameplay. And something that I thought was pretty clever was sort of the focus on building up combos through training these three different traps as well as other room elements that can also do damage. I believe the higher the combo, you start to do more damage, but I might not be 100% sure on that. It at least felt like it did. And it was really fun trying to find out the optimal ways to maximize your combos or how to trigger different room elements. Actually, discovering room elements was one of my favorite parts of the game because I didn't even know it was really a thing. And then I put up a pendulum and I missed my target, but then the pendulum hit a spike ball chained to the ceiling that wound up hitting the opponent that I just missed. So not even knowing that was a thing, it was pretty cool. And the other real standout moment in this game was when I developed my first infinite trap. It was actually in that first room in this background gameplay, near those swordman statues that would swing their sword down occasionally. I would have a vacuum floor right in front of them. Then they would get hit by the sword, smacked by a pendulum into the wall, but then vacuumed right back in front of the sword. And it almost became like a rhythm game at that point, where you just have to keep timing things perfectly to keep them in place, not get a little too careless. Because if you give them just that split second to get up, they'll move right out of the way of what I developed there. And I did that with one of the harder enemies, one of the boss fights too, so that was great. Unfortunately for me, that was kind of the peak of the game. The one issue I really had with this game was some of the repetitiveness and lack of variety, since there was only like 3 to 4 maps, and when you got 14 to 15 main missions and side missions, plus if you go for completion, you need to play through the campaign again with a different set of side missions. And hell, if you wanted all of the endings attached to one save file, that's another 2 playthroughs. Although at that point you're better off just splitting your save up. And it's just a lot. And the one way I could have seen things being kept fresh is if you had more traps to sort of experiment with. Not that there's necessarily a low amount, but I don't know, it felt like you only gained enough resources to unlock a new one every 2 to 3 missions. Granted, maybe you can put a little bit of that on me, because I could have swapped back in some traps that I hadn't used in a while or used very minimally in general, but that's just not the way I really wanted to play. The approach I took is when I unlocked a new trap, I kicked off the trap in that category that I found the least useful and just kept building from there. And I don't know, it's just hard to unsee or justify not being efficient. For me, finding that and using it is almost the whole point of a game, you know? And after I discovered the guilty Lance wall and was able to mimic something close to that infinite combo I talked about earlier, once again with the vacuum floor and pendulum, essentially finding what I considered to be the three best traps. I don't know, maybe there could have been better balancing. I don't know if that was really an issue or not the intent, I guess. But yeah, basically I feel like a definitive new room each chapter or new trap would have kept things fresh enough for me, and the game didn't necessarily do that. The story of the game was fine, nothing too crazy or special, but I did find it kind of personally interesting. It was just one of those, you kept have different characters one-upping each other as to, you know, who was in control of everything going on. And I don't know, it was generally fun to experience for the first time. Something I discovered later that I didn't realize is I was actually already mildly familiar with this series. I didn't realize this was part of the Deception series, which I was exposed through Warriors All-Stars. I actually particularly remember the Deception reps from that game because for whatever reason I thought they were some of the more fun characters to play as in that game. I forget how I knew they were from Deception, whether Warriors All-Stars just did a great job going through the history, or at least a great job making me interested to do my own research. But another thing I thought was kind of funny was I did get kind of Fatal Frame vibes, Project Zero, from this game, just because I feel like they were both really interesting, unique concepts, maybe with a bit of a flawed execution, both made by Koei Tecmo, or actually just Tecmo for the earlier ones, not realizing it was actually the same exact development team, at least for some of the first ones. So that was kind of cool and interesting to find out. But yeah, overall, I would recommend checking it out because it is so unique. Maybe I would say skip the side missions. Maybe that would help things not get as repetitive later on. And you really don't gain a lot of the game's currency, at least from my experience, from them to get newer traps and that. And yeah, I did wind up picking up the rest of the series pretty much. And I'm pretty curious if other entries sort of fix some of the issues I found here. And I just in general see this being a game in retrospect, similar to Fatal Frame, that I'll sort of appreciate for what it was. And, you know, want to dive a bit deeper, even if it wasn't crazy good, you know?